Hello, you beautiful people. So, I finally decided to stop being lazy with the Aglaea Kit video, and I'm guessing you clicked on this video because you want to know all the changes that were made to Aglaea's kit and some other things like new character skins coming in patch 3.0, right? Luckily for you though, you've landed on the perfect video to get some info on all these topics. Today, I'm mainly going to discuss about all the changes that were made to Aglaea's kit during the recent cycle, and we'll also discuss if she's still a top-tier DPS at the end of the video because I've seen a lot of negativity around her kit after the recent changes. Along with this though, we also have fresh info related to some characters getting a new playable skin from patch 3.0, so you might want to stick around for that as well. Next up, I know that a lot of you guys are planning to pull for Fugue and Firefly in the second half of 2.7, and if you want some good discount on your Stellar Jade packs, let me just introduce LD Shop to you. This site is honestly a great top-up center, and the top-up process is really easy as well because all you need to do is select your pack and enter your UID and server in this box right here. Yep, that's the entire top-up process. After waiting for a few minutes in the game, I easily received my jades and also saved a little bit of money. By the way, if you register in LD Shop from my link in the description or the pinned comment, you will get an extra 5% off on top of all the other discounts. Alright, just a quick little info that if you spend more than $80 in a single month on LD Shop, you can get a VIP membership for yourself, and you're probably curious what this membership does, right? Well, it basically provides you with a free monthly pass, weekly discount coupons, and some monthly discount coupons as well. Moving on, let me quickly mention the usual disclaimer that this version of Aglaea's kit is not the final version, and some changes might be made to her kit in the upcoming weeks, so take all this info with a grain of salt. Also, the info related to the new character skins comes from a somewhat new source in the community, so don't take it too seriously either. With that being said, let's begin without wasting any more of your time or energy. Alright, I'm guessing most of you guys are interested in the changes made to Aglaea's kit, so let's start with that topic first. Dude, I know that there's a lot of negativity around the changes that were made to her kit, but honestly, I think her kit was just adjusted around the board with some negative and positive changes. I can see why people would think she got nerfed heavily though, because the changes that they made to her kit are quite confusing, but that's what I'm here for, so let me quickly simplify all the changes for you guys. Okay, the first change that they made to Aglaea's kit was her talent, and they pretty much reworked how her Memo Sprite's initial speed works. Basically, the Garment Maker, which is her Memo Sprite used to have an initial base speed of 40 in the previous talent, but now they changed it so that the Garment Maker's base speed scales of Aglaea's own base speed. In simple words, this is a slight nerf for the people who aren't pulling for her signature light cone, because if you've watched the video that I made on Aglaea's initial kit, you most likely know that her light cone increases her own base speed by 12. Now, if her base speed is higher with her signature light cone, the Garment Maker will obviously be faster due to the new talent, and for the people who aren't planning to pull her signature light cone, Garment Maker will be a tad bit slower. Okay, you don't really need to worry about this change a lot, and for all the people who aren't planning to pull her light cone, they did add an additional part to her talent, and this part makes it so that all of Aglaea's attacks deal some additional damage if the enemy is afflicted with a seam stitch state. Yep, that's pretty much all the changes that they made to her talent, and I know these changes probably look like a nerf overall due to the speed change, but trust me, the additional part that they included in her talent at last actually makes her damage much higher and raises her overall ceiling. All in all, I would say her talent got a net buff, and this talent becomes even better if you're planning to pull for her signature light cone. Moving on, the next change that they made was done to the Memo Sprite's talent, and here they reduced the amount of speed that Garment Maker gets per stack from a base of 60 speed to a base of 50 speed. Okay, this nerf is like a 60 speed nerf at max stacks for the Garment Maker, which seems quite big at first glance, but looking at the huge amount of speed the Garment Maker normally has, I don't really think this nerf is that big of a deal. Overall, her Memo Sprite's talent did get nerfed a little bit at the end of the day, so there's that. Next up, they added an additional part to her initial technique, which makes it really useful utility-wise, so let's quickly skim through that. Basically, this additional part says that whenever Aglaea uses her technique on an enemy to enter a battle, she regenerates a total of 30 energy at the very start. Dude, this additional part actually makes her technique really good now, because I think we all know that Aglaea's ramp up until she gets her ultimate is quite annoying, and she is insanely weak outside her supreme stand state, so this extra energy that she gets from her technique is pretty nice. Overall, a pretty big utility buff, and also makes her ultimate ramp up much faster at the start of the battle. Anyways, moving on, they completely removed the 30% damage buff provided to the garment maker from her third trace, and now this trace says that whenever Aglaea enters a battle, she regenerates her own energy to 50%. Yep, this trace is also a pretty big utility buff for her in the overworld and SU fights, and makes her really comfy to use. But it's kind of a useless trace in all the endgame modes because all the units start at 50% energy anyway. All in all, I would say this trace change is a nerf overall due to the damage loss, even though it makes her much more viable to use in the overworld and SU. Lastly, I was saving the biggest change until the end, and this is a change that they made to her joint attack multipliers. So, they nerfed her joint attack multipliers by a huge amount, and if you didn't know, Aglaea's joint attacks along with the garment maker are quite literally her main source of damage. Yep, I think it's very obvious that this is a pretty big nerf overall, and I think they tried to balance this multiplier nerf by giving her that additional 30% damage to her own talent, which does make it a little bit better. Alright, with that, I've finally covered all the changes that they made to her base kit, and as for the final conclusion, I would say she was nerfed just a little bit in order to make her much more comfier and viable to play in the overworld and the simulated universe. Basically, she wasn't nerfed heavily like a lot of people are saying, but she wasn't buffed either, and Aglaea is still a very good DPS to pull for if you like her design and her playstyle. Next up, talking about the changes that they made to her light cone and her Eidolons, they slightly buffed her light cone, and now it gives a total of 9% extra crit damage and 9% extra basic damage bonus than its initial version at max stacks. All in all, her light cone is honestly a very good light cone to pull for due to these changes, and also the base speed increase that it provides to Aglaea, which makes it a little bit easy to build her. Finally, moving on to her Eidolons, they genuinely butchered all of them, but I think it kind of makes sense because if you've watched the initial kit video that I made on Aglaea, you already know that her Eidolons were some of the best Eidolons in the entire game, and she had insane value for vertical investment. Okay, starting with her E1, they reduced the amount of defense shred per stack, going from a 25% defense shred to a 14% defense shred, and to compensate for this, they increased the maximum amount of stacks from 2 to 3. Now, you probably think this is just a slight nerf, right? Well, not really, because looking at the way how her E1 works, you'll almost never have all the 3 stacks of defense shred present on the enemy, and most of the time it will only be a total of 2 stacks. This is actually a pretty huge nerf to her E1 because she goes from having an average of 50% defense shred to having an average of 28% defense shred, and I don't think I need to explain how big of a nerf that is. I mean, I'm not saying a 28% defense shred is not good, but that previous 50% defense shred from her initial E1 was just way too insane, and overall, I would say her E1 got massively nerfed. Next up, they swapped her E2 and her E4 with each other, and now her E2 is her E4, and her E4 is her E2. Okay, maybe the way I worded it was very confusing, but all in all, her E4 was honestly a better Eidolon than her E2 in her initial kit. So it's really nice that they made it accessible earlier, and they didn't change any of the effects of both of these Eidolons. Lastly, they completely reworked her E6, and now it's very similar to the Herta's E6, where it gives her additional 20% lightning resistance penetration and also increases her joint attack damage up to a total of 60% depending on Aglaea's or the garment maker's maximum speed. Overall, this E6 is a lot better than her previous E6, and just like most of the other new DPSs, her E6 is also kind of broken. Anyways, with that, I've covered all the changes that were made to Aglaea's kit in the recent cycle, and I want to ask you a question. How do you feel about all these changes? I personally thought she would get nerfed way more than she did because honestly, her initial kit was really strong, but her current kit is also very good. Continuing on, I know some of you probably skipped all the Aglaea changes just to get the info about the character skins, so let's quickly skim through that. Okay, according to a somewhat new source in the community, they recently found some assets in the files related to character avatar and skins UI, and according to the same source, this might be an indication that we'll see some characters getting a new skin from patch 3.0 onwards. Now, after this post, a reliable source actually made a follow-up comment, and they stated that yes, these assets are most likely related to character skins, and this UI will be a subsection that we'll see in the character info screen alongside the other subsections like traces, relics, and all that. Dude, I'm actually so excited for character skins that it's kind of insane because honestly, I would genuinely take out my wallet if either Sunday, Kafka, Aventurine, or Acheron gets a skin, and I don't think I even need to think twice about it. Oh, by the way, going back like a few months in patch 2.3 or something, I think some of you might remember that we had info related to a Kafka skin coming in version 2.5, but sadly, we all know that the Kafka skin never really turned out to be true. Now though, if this info about the character skin assets is actually true, we might see some new skins soon enough, and honestly, I'm pretty sure that a lot of character skins will sell insanely well, especially if it's a really popular character. Alright, with that, I've finally covered all the info that I stated at the start of the video, and I hope you guys understood my explanation on the changes made to Aglaea's kit. Do remember to comment down how you guys feel about these changes, and also the new character skins coming in patch 3.0, because as always, I'm somewhat curious to know your opinion on it. Also, if you've stayed until the end of the video, I think you probably liked the video and you might want to consider subscribing as well. With that being said, I really love y'all and I will see you in another one.